And thank you all again for being here today. This was definitely short notice. And I'm sorry for those that had to work during this time, but we are recording this so that we can share this with even more people. I want to thank both Laura Wright with the Virginia Poverty Law Center and Nakia Cook with the City of Newport News for being here as our main presenters. A lot is happening. Particularly during the pandemic. And we just want to make sure that as we're hearing reports and conflicting information about what renters and tenants should be doing, we wanted to set some of the record straight and give you as much information as possible. We've had new changes since session earlier this year in 2020, which feels like a lifetime ago. And then we also have some new changes coming from special session. And then there are some federal level things, some city level things. So it's a lot of information that we wanted to come talk about in one place. So now we'll kick it over to Laura and she'll tell you some information coming from the very fine folks at the Virginia Poverty Law Center that are really fighting on behalf of tenants and making sure that everyone knows their rights, the resources and information to help prevent evictions and to let you know what you can best do to take care of you and your families. So Laura, take it away.
Thank you so much, Delegate Price. I'm going to share my screen now, at least the PowerPoint part. So I'm just going to over a few of the protections out there. I realize this is a lot of information, and we can always make these slides available to you if you don't catch everything. If you ever have a question, you can reach out to me, laura@vplc.org. So starting off, I know we've done presentations in the past about your rights as a tenant, and I'm not going to go into the whole eviction process this time, but I just want you to remember these three things. That your landlord cannot cut off your utilities, lock you out, or take other actions to deny you access to your home, such as like threatening you. And you don't have to move out just because your landlord tells you to leave or files an eviction case against you. There are legal steps your landlord has to take before removing you from the property. So they have to win in court and have the sheriff issue a writ of eviction to remove you. So if your landlord hasn't done all these steps, you don't have to leave, and there are steps you can take to address that. So the first thing I wanted to cover is a federal level protection that the Centers for Disease Control started towards the beginning of September, that is effective through the end of the year, so until December 31st of 2020. So I think we can all recognize the health risk associated with evictions. So if you're turned out of your home and you're either homeless or have to double up with another person, that can increase the spread of COVID. And so they put in some limited protections to help tenants who are behind on rent. This moratorium is not automatic. And so there are some steps that tenants need to take in order to avoid an eviction. So it's meant to help a certain set of tenants. And so you have to satisfy all of these categories to take advantage of these protections. One, it only applies to tenants who haven't been able to pay rent because they've had a large loss of household income or they've had really high medical expenses. This would be, you've fallen behind on rent because you've had reduced hours at work, or if you've had to put a huge chunk of your income towards paying for childcare because school isn't in session or the daycare is closed, or you've been in the hospital and had high medical bills. I will note that unlike some of the state level protections we will talk about, it doesn't specify that your loss of income is directly tied to COVID or employment. It's much more broader than that, but it does have to be a pretty substantial loss of income. And it has to be a situation where if you are evicted, you would either become homeless or have to double up with friends or family. I will note that if you would have to go live in a hotel, that still counts as being homeless. So you could still take advantage of this protection. And it only applies to tenants who make less than $99,000 a year. So it's really aimed at those lower wage earners. And then it only applies in a situation where you're getting evicted for not paying rent. It doesn't cover situations where there was criminal activity on the property or there is, a threat to the safety of other residents. It only covers these non-payment instances. I will note there may be a situation, for example, if you've stayed after the end of your lease, that it might protect you, but it really depends on the language in your lease. And so you should seek legal advice if you're in that situation. And then tenants also have to make best efforts to try to get government assistance. And we'll go over into some of those programs that are available to you. And so what do you need to do in order to take advantage of this? One, continue to try to pay as much rent as you can, even if it's, $20 here and there, just to show that you're making every effort. Two, use your best efforts to apply for that government rental assistance, and document those efforts. We understand that a lot of these places you may call and leave a voicemail, so just create a log of those times that you've called or letters that you sent to just demonstrate that, hey, I've done everything I can to try to get assistance. I just haven't heard back yet. And third, you have to sign this CDC declaration and give it to your landlord. I will note that this declaration says that you're claiming all these different factors are true under penalty of perjury. So if these things don't apply to you or you have a question about it, definitely talk to an attorney. Make sure you understand all of the provisions before signing anything. I don't want you to end up in a situation where if you're unsure and you sign anyways, and then you end up in court, that a judge is going to deny your protections because you didn't understand what it says. So you can give this to your landlord at any point in the eviction process. Either you're late, but you haven't been sued yet, or you've already been sued by your landlord and you're heading into court. You can even hand it to your landlord at your court date. If you've already lost in court, you can still give it to your landlord to try to stop that last step of the eviction. But the sooner you do this, the better. I would try to go through as many channels as possible to make sure your landlord gets a copy. I would always send a copy by certified mail, which should give you a tracking number to prove that you sent it. If you're unsure, either send it to the place where you would normally send your rent check, or if you have a copy of the lease, the address listed on there. And then also try to hand a physical copy to your landlord if possible. And then always keep a copy for your records, just so you know what you've signed, the date that you signed it. And if there are multiple adults on the lease, you should each complete your own declaration and give it to the landlord. And so it's pretty easy to find a copy of this. You can either do a quick Google search of CDC declaration, and it should be the first thing that comes up. I also put a little bit.ly here that should take you directly to that form. So one of the main assistance available for renters right now is through the Virginia Rent and Mortgage Relief Program. To qualify for this, you have to have a lease or mortgage statement that's in your name, or something else showing that there's that landlord-tenant relationship. So even if you don't have a written lease, if you have a text message agreement with your landlord that you're going to be staying in this property for a certain amount of money, or you received like that late notice, that shows that there is that landlord-tenant relationship. And then you had to have experienced a loss of income due to COVID, but that's a pretty wide category. So it's either you've been laid off, if you've had a reduction in your hours, if your place of employment just closed, or if you've not been getting any child or spousal support because your significant other or previous significant other has lost their employment, because I know that can hurt a lot of families. Or if you've had to stay home to care for your children because their daycare or school has been closed, or if you've been unable to find work due to COVID, or if you fall into one of those high-risk categories of COVID and are unable or unwilling to work because of that reason. I think, the administration is trying to be as flexible as possible with people, understanding that everyone is in very different circumstances, and COVID has had an effect on so many areas of our lives that may not be directly evident. And then a couple more points is your rent or mortgage amount has to be at or below 150% fair market rent. The local administrator will help you figure out if you meet those categories, but basically it's not going to cover you if you're paying $3,000 a month for a studio apartment. And your household income has to be at or below 80% of the area median income. Again, the local program administrator will help you figure that out, but basically it's supposed to be assisting people who are in the most need. So to apply, it's through a local program for the Hampton and Newport News residents. It's the Hampton Roads Community Action Program. They have two ways that you can apply. You can either apply by giving them a phone call. They also have a link on their website to apply online. And they should be able to help you with collecting all the documents that you need and with contacting the landlord. Now, if you are a landlord, you can now apply on behalf of tenants through Virginia Housing. You can visit the website here, virginiahousing.com/RMRP, or you can email them. If you're a tenant, you can always ask your landlord, hey, can you, particularly if you and your neighbors are all struggling, it's probably easiest if the landlord applies on behalf of all the tenants who are struggling. It's going to be the fastest way for the landlords to get their money. So if you have that kind of okay relationship with your landlord, I would definitely encourage the landlord to apply directly. Another protection that is still in place that Delegate Price has really fought for is, if you've had that loss of income due to COVID, you can ask the judge to delay your eviction case for 60 days. And this is still helpful even with the CDC moratorium because it doesn't require that you've applied for government rental assistance. You simply had to have lost income due to COVID, and Delegate Price put in some language during special session just to clarify that it does not have to be a total loss, just any loss of income, and applies to any tenant affected by this. You qualify, and it's available up until 90 days after the end of the state of COVID emergency, which we are still in and will be for the foreseeable future. I'll note that this doesn't make your case go away. It's just simply giving you more time to try to catch up on rent. So to do this, you must go to your first court date. If you're not sure when your case is going to be heard, definitely call the court clerk to make sure you have the date and time. Don't be late. Judges do not entertain people showing up an hour late. They'll probably have already decided your case by that point. And then you have to bring some sort of written proof that you've lost that income. This could be a pay stub that's showing $0. If you have a furlough letter from your employer, something that's saying that you are not essential, or if you don't have any of that, sign a statement, an affidavit saying, what your employment was, how many hours you had, if you lost your job, what your reduction in hours was, and show how that's related to COVID. So more judges are accepting this, but I think it's always best to try to at least get a letter from your previous employer. And then just ask the judge for that continuance. I think tenants representing themselves in court have had most success when they are upfront and assertive when asking for this. I know eviction court can be very stressful and the judge moves through cases very quickly. So be assertive, have your documentation in hand, and demand that 60-day continuance. And another thing that, our housing champions like Delegate Price have advocated for is a statewide eviction moratorium. Unfortunately, we didn't get that, but there are going to be some state eviction protections coming up. This language is included in the governor's budget, which is not going to get signed until after the election. So we don't know when this is going to go into effect, except sometime in November. I'm sure Delegate Price will continue to give you updates about when this happens, but just so you know what's on the horizon, here are the basics. Once this goes into effect and through the end of the year, landlords will not be able to take any action to end a tenancy based on non-payment of rent unless the tenant simply refuses to apply or cooperate with the rental assistance. And then starting January 1st of next year, landlords will have to provide a 14-day pay or quit notice to tenants who do not pay rent. Currently, most landlords only have to give a 5-day pay or quit. So now starting January 1st, they'll have to give you that 14-day notice. And then starting January 1st, if you don't pay your rent and they give you that 14-day notice, they have to give you information about those rental assistance programs. So they can't just simply say apply for assistance and not give you information. It has to include those details. And then also, beginning January 1st, unless the tenant tells the landlord that they're not going to apply for assistance, the landlord would be required to apply on behalf of the tenant within that 14 days. Now, here's the catch. If the landlord doesn't receive any written approval from that rental assistance program within 45 days of when they send that notice, the landlord can just go ahead and evict the tenant. I have a lot of concerns about that 45-day timeline. So what I would encourage everyone is if you are behind on rent, apply for rental assistance as soon as possible. There's also a limited set of funds currently that the state has. Hopefully, if they go through it, they will be able to put more into that pot of money, but the sooner you act, the better. And if you simply are refusing or don't cooperate, the landlord can go ahead and evict you. So, make sure you're answering your phone, or if you have email that you're giving all the up-to-date information that rental program needs from you. Another thing that's coming up that Delegate Price has fought for, that there might be some slight adjustments to, is a payment plan. We don't know when that's going to go into effect. Again, I'm sure Delegate Price will update you when that does. So this isn't the case yet, but be on the lookout. So under this, if you fall behind on rent, the landlord would have to offer you a payment plan. They would have to give you 14 days to enter that payment plan. And if you just don't respond or don't enter into the plan, they could go ahead and file the eviction. The payment plan has to be in 6-month equal installments. So they can't, say, okay, you pay, $100 now and $5 next month. It's supposed to be a manageable plan. And they have to give you at least 6 months. If you have less than 6 months left on your lease, then the payment plan would be, for however many months are left. So if you only have 4 months left on the lease, you only have 4 months to pay. And they also can't add late charges onto each of those installments. So that way you're not getting penalized just because you chose to enter into this plan. And as long as you continue to make those timely payments and the full amount, they cannot evict you. However, if you miss a payment, that landlord would then have to send you that new 14-day written notice before they file an eviction. The caveat to this, it only applies to those larger landlords. So if you're, renting from like a mom and pop, they don't have to do this. So for any landlords who own 4 or fewer properties, they don't have to follow this, but for those larger landlords, they definitely do. Something else that is on the horizon, starting in 2021 through 2028, landlords will not be able to deny applicants solely because they haven't been able to pay rent during COVID or they were evicted during COVID. So it's supposed to protect applicants who are applying for a new apartment. Again, it only applies to those larger landlords, unfortunately. And basically, everyone's struggling right now with COVID, and we don't want people to be penalized when trying to find future housing because of that. And if the landlord does take that into consideration anyways and denies you, there is like a penalty for the landlord. You can sue that landlord and recover $1,000 in statutory damages. This law is very confusing and it has a lot of technical requirements. And rather than getting to in all that, I just want to share that if you were denied housing and you think it might be related to any previous payment history during COVID, immediately ask the landlord for more information. If they send you an electronic denial, I believe you have until the next business day to request more information or to challenge that. So always when you're applying, make sure you're, staying on top of your emails and phone calls so that if you do get a denial, you can act quickly to find out why. And then definitely seek legal advice. There's so many holes and caveats to this provision that it's going to make it a little bit difficult to enforce. But if you are diligent and stay on top of it, it should offer some protection and give you some remedies if this happens. It's really expensive to continue applying for apartments over and over again. A lot of these places are charging like $50, $80 application fees, and that really adds up. And so we don't want tenants in a situation where they've applied to 10 different places, keep getting turned down, all because they've lost income during this COVID emergency. And so there are resources out there to help you if you have any questions. The first is the Eviction Legal Helpline. We just offer brief legal advice. So if you have a question about an eviction, you can dial 1-833-NO-EVICT. You can also visit vpoc.org. We have some resources for you there. If you do need full representation in a civil legal matter, the Legal Aid Society of Eastern Virginia can help you out. You can call that phone number, 757-827-5078, or visit their website. I believe they have a way that you can apply for their services online. They do have income requirements, so they only serve low-income people, and there are also some requirements related to citizenship status. And then again, here's the information for the rental assistance program at the Hampton Roads Community Action Program. Like I said, you can apply by phone or you can apply online. And I believe Newport News might have some additional resources, so I will turn it over to Nakia to talk about those.
Yeah, so before Ms. Cook starts, I just want to reiterate a few things. Some of the dates that Laura couldn't give you are because things are still in process. We just passed the last few bills from special session on Friday. So the governor has 7 days from the date of communication. So like the House and the Senate, we did our work. Then we communicate those bills to the governor, where the governor has 7 days. It's a little bit different on the budget, but that's why Laura was like, we're not sure when it's going to go into effect. And then unfortunately, because of how things work, there's still one more step for some of these bills, and that's the reconvene session, where if the governor has an amendment, we have to vote in favor of the amendment, and then the bill goes into effect. So stay tuned. If you have not signed up for my newsletters, be sure to do that, because we send out updates all the time on that. The other thing that I just want to really uplift that Laura stated was not waiting. That we know that more need exists than what is being currently funded, period. The money will run out before everybody that needs the help gets it. So I know that this is a lot, and I know that, it's just tough, and sometimes you just want to dig your head in the sand, but you can't do that on this. You got to get straight to the lawyer. You got to get straight to the documentation of everything that you're doing, and also getting straight to the application of those for the funding. That is really, really important that it happens as soon as possible. But we have lots of people here that can help you, Laura. And then now also we've handled federal and state. So now we're going to go local and hear from Ms. Cook about what Newport News is doing proactively to help its folks. And it might be using some of those CARES Act dollars that we got. So Ms. Cook, if you could go on and tell us your story and what you have to offer. And we got to unmute you so that they can hear all this great info.
Absolutely, that would be nice. All right. As you said, I am Miss Cook, and I'm here to discuss some options that we offer here, services here at City of Newport News, Department of Human Services specifically. So I'm here specifically to talk about our newest program, which is the Supplemental Assistance for Funding Emergencies Program, also known as SAFE. The purpose of the program is to support individuals and families experiencing financial hardships, of course, due to the COVID-19 pandemic related to mortgage, rent, food, utilities, medication assistance, and others. Um, in order to qualify, there is criteria to receive SAFE funding. The person must be a resident of the city of Newport News. The household must have incurred a loss due to the pandemic. Also, the family or individual must have incurred an emergency which exceeds their financial means. The house and the household must be facing a significant risk of homelessness. And the last criteria is that the customer is ineligible for any VDSS programs and benefits due to excess income or other qualifying data. So, how the process works for our SAFE program is the customer applies for a benefit program or another agency service related, such as I'll just say energy assistance or SNAP benefit or our housing broker team, which I'll talk about shortly, and have to be denied. So, in order to be eligible for SAFE funding, customers must be denied funding from other internal program sources. The customers will receive a notice of denial statement indicating denial reason. And once the individual is denied, the worker will automatically obtain the customer's consent to submit a referral through the SAFE Assistance program to obtain a one-time supplemental payment for a designated need. So once the consent is obtained, then the customer's information and verifications are reviewed and approved by our SAFE program PLCs for final payment. So that's our SAFE program. So another resource that we offer is our housing is through our housing broker team funds, as I just mentioned shortly. The starting point for anyone who is experiencing the housing crisis throughout the greater Hampton Roads is calling the Regional Housing Crisis Hotline. So hotline staff will work to connect individuals to individual services with local providers. And intake specialist interviews the individual or the family to determine which referrals make the most sense based on their situation and what referrals, and what's based on the situation and what's available in the community. Excuse me. The hotline does not provide any direct financial assistance, so please note that. So what happens is once the intake is completed, homeless or potential homeless residents of Newport News are referred to our housing broker team. And so the housing broker team program is designed to prevent homelessness before it happens, after it happens, and to keep homelessness from reoccurring. The housing broker team, also known as HBT, you may hear that reference, they assist individuals and families with housing barriers to locate and secure affordable housing. So the HBT team assists households by providing limited financial assistance and intensive care management services. So there's a case management piece that goes with that. And so the regional housing crisis hotline phone number is, so I'll give that to you, 757-587-4202. And their hours of operation are Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And lastly, another resource that we offer, in January of 2020, we took on a major new responsibility, we as in the Newport News Department of Human Services, which is the overall management and operations oversight of our Four Oaks Day Service Center. Some may have heard of that. The city opened Four Oaks about a year ago to better serve people who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. The Four Oaks Day Service Center is a one-stop service and assistance center where men and women and families experiencing homelessness receive supports and are connected to comprehensive community services under one roof, all thanks to on-site partners. The Four Oaks Day Service Center offers workforce development supports, housing assistance, and comprehensive case management services that give people the opportunity to transform their lives. So at Four Oaks aims to break the cycle of homelessness and poverty through a low barrier, client-centered, trauma-informed approach to case management services. But in addition to providing those comprehensive supports that transform people's lives, services at the Four Oaks Day Center meet the basic needs of homeless individuals and families. So the center features like showers and restrooms, laundry facilities, mailing address, mail pickup, telephone access. They have private meeting space, counseling spaces, haircuts, storage for their personal items while on site. And so the Four Oaks Day Center is open 7 days a week. from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. It is located at 7401 Ward Boulevard in Newport News. And the phone number for the day center is 757 975 5200. And so those are all the resources that the city is offering currently through the Newport News Department of Human Services. So if you have any questions, please feel free.
Awesome, thank you. And so, I mean, this is just like a lot, right? A lot of information. But one thing that we can promise is that we are going to add a lot of this to the website. We're also going to have a follow-up email. So again, if you have not registered for our email newsletters, you can go to Delegate Marcia Price, all spelled out, delegatemarciaprice.com. And we will you can register to receive the newsletters, but we'll also have a page completely dedicated to these resources. Let's say within the next few hours, we'll get that all up and running so that you can click on the links and have the phone numbers that were mentioned by Ms. Wright and Ms. Cook, and we can go from there. And so now I'm gonna ask a question just to see if either of you have input, but just to reiterate, because we've heard a lot, but just to kind of contextualize it. If I am at my home and today I received a summons to go to court for an eviction, what do I do? And Laura, if you could chime in, and then, you know, Mr. Key, if you have something, but Ms. Laura, what would I do if I'm holding a summons for an eviction? What's the next step?
So the first thing I would do is call the eviction legal helpline. They can give you, advice about your situation, help you review the notice, find out the reason for the lawsuit. And if it's a situation where you need direct legal services, refer you to that local legal aid program more quickly than if you apply directly with that legal aid. You should also, and if you think it's based on not paying rent, immediately apply for rental assistance. If you are concerned about paying rent right now, apply anyways. Things happen, so just be prepared. And then fill out that CDC declaration I mentioned and give it to your landlord as soon as possible.
And I would recommend that they contact our regional housing crisis hotline number that I provided. Yes, because that will be the starting point for everything related to housing. And then they can bring it down to the lower level, get referred to our housing broker team, and then get the funds they need to. We have the contacts. Of course, our housing broker team partner with a lot of tenants. So to maybe stop the eviction, they can have those type relationships where we can make payment, figure out what it is, and help the tenant the best way we can.
Yeah, and I think
sorry, go on, Laura.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, like, to your point about what you should immediately do, like getting that notice is scary. It's called a summons for unlawful detainer. Like it's criminal sounding, and when it's something scary, it's something that you try to put off to the last minute possible. I know I do that. If I have a disappointment, I'm going to put it off into the last possible second. So things that are painful, we tend to procrastinate. This is not something you should procrastinate with. If you wait until 2 days before your court date, we will do everything we can to assist you, but services take time. And even though people in the service industry are working really hard, doing overtime to assist people, the need is so great. And it can take a few days to turn things around. So don't wait until 2 days before your court date. Please do it as soon as you receive that notice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, I want to say thank you to those that were here with us, and that was Laura Wright from the Virginia Poverty Law Center, and then Nakia Cook from the City of Newport News' Department of Human Services. And of course, I have with us Tempest Boone, my Chief of Staff, who has been handling all of the constituent services calls that we've been getting about unemployment and housing. And so we will continue to thank her for her hard work, but we are trying to get anyone that has a need attached to a resource, because the resources are available. So if you're watching this and this may not be applicable to you, but you know an aunt or a family member or a friend or a neighbor is going through this situation, please share this with them so that they can watch it, get the contact numbers that they need. And again, we'll also have information at delegatemarciaprice.com within the next few hours. So thank you for watching, but I am going to ask if you could hold on after this, and we'll have a few questions, but you can also post questions once we put this on Facebook and Instagram, the links to it. Post questions. We watch all of the social media very closely, and so we can help you connect. We're not as much into Facebook messages, but you can also email us at delmprice@house.virginia.gov or text us at 757-266-5935. Thank you so much.